In this section, you will understand what RESTful web services are and design a RESTful API for some of the functionalities of the Spring Chocolate Store. RESTful web services have gained popularity over the years. It's widely considered by many to be an excellent alternative to the older SOAP web service specification. The term REST stands for Representational State Transfer. It was coined by Roy Fielding in his doctoral dissertation back in the year 2000. Fielding describes REST as an architectural principle for applications on the web. Think of REST as guidelines or constraints applied to various components and elements in the system. When these REST architectural principles are applied to web services, you get web services that are RESTful. There are some important characteristics of RESTful web services. The first important characteristic is the usage of resource URLs. You've already seen this in action when we wrote the Spring MVC chocolate store. For example, the URL for product with ID 4 is /products/4, not something like fetch product info.do ID equals 4, for example. Why design URLs this way? The idea is to have URLs that identify resources as standalone entities, independent of the server-side implementation. The client doesn't need to know the existence of a fetch product info controller or action or whatever else is going on in the server. They're just interested in one of the products which has the ID 4. The resource-based URL makes it very clear. This type of URIs are also called element URIs. Another important characteristic is the usage of HTTP methods. All communication between a client and a RESTful web service endpoint happens over the HTTP protocol. The HTTP protocol defines methods, sometimes called verbs, to indicate an action to be performed. So if you want to get info about a product with ID 4, you make a GET request to the URL /products/4. You always use GET to retrieve a resource. To update the information about a product, you issue a PUT request on the same resource URL, but with the updated data in the body of the request. To delete a resource, you use the delete method. So for example, a delete request sent to /products/4 will delete the product with ID 4 from the catalog. To create a new product, you issue a post request with the new product details in the body of the request. But note the URL for the post. It is /products, not a specific product ID. Why is this? You don't know what the ID of the new product should be or the next available ID in the system. Ideally, the server should figure that out. So the post request is made to the parent plural entity URL, and the new product is created with whatever ID the server sees fit to use. URIs like /products are called collection URIs because they represent a collection. In this example, /products represents all the products in the system. The same HTTP method semantics apply to collection URIs too. A GET request fetches the list of all the products, a delete on this URI deletes all the products, and a PUT replaces the list of products with a new list. We've talked about URIs and methods. What is the format in which data is exchanged? When building web applications like the Spring Chocolate Store, we present data in a way that's readable to humans with formatting and styling. But for an API, the exchange should be minimal, just the necessary data. There are multiple formats that can be used though. For instance, data can be sent and received either using XML or JSON, or both depending on what the client wants. The client specifies in the request header what format it can accept, and the server returns one of the acceptable formats if it can. This is called content negotiation, and we've already seen this in action in section 7. As for the choice of formats, JSON is growing in popularity because it's concise and much less verbose than XML. We'll use JSON for our demo web service. Another important characteristic of RESTful web services is the concept called hypermedia as the engine of application state, abbreviated as HATEOAS. To understand this concept, think of how you browse a website. The only information you need to start using the Spring Chocolate store is the URL of the homepage. You do not need to know the URL of the product page or the shopping cart page. You can navigate to those pages because the homepage provides links to them. So all you need is the URI for the starting point. Similarly, a REST client enters the REST application through a fixed base URL. The responses from the server also include other URLs that the client can use to discover more resource representations in APIs. This lets the web service evolve over time without having to communicate to the client and have them change too. Having understood these concepts, let's design a simple RESTful API for some of the functionalities of the Spring Chocolate store. We want to enable programmatic access to the product catalog by providing the ability to browse categories and products using REST APIs. We also want to provide a REST API to place an order. Finally, when developing REST web services, there needs to be a way to call and test them. There are several browser plugins for major browsers that act as REST clients. I happen to use the Chrome plugin called Postman in these videos, but you should be able to follow along using any other similar plugin or add-on on a browser of your choice. In this video, you learned an introduction to REST and RESTful web services. You also learned the difference between element and collection URIs. And finally, you learned the advantage of implementing HATEOAS concepts.